Welcome everybody. I'd like to take you through the steps that I go through when I'm making one of these wood-handled Carter & Sons tool handles using their wood handle tool adapter. So the one that we're going to do today is going to be a little bit longer. It's going to be a 20-inch handle. This part here is 4 inches long, so I need 16 inches of wood. And we've got that here on the lathe, all ready to go. The handle adapter comes in, comes in a nice little tube. It's got the screws down in there. Instruction sheets, obviously I've already made one, so I've got the instructions out. But we're 4 inches here, and they've got a nice little drawing that comes with it, which gives you the dimensions. So a 5/8 hole we're going to need into this 1.25 inch tenon that fits into this ferrule on there, and we'll discuss that as we get going. But let's start getting this piece rounded out a little bit. And let me grab my Air 3 from Microclimate. A little tricky to get on with the microphone. All right, if you're interested in one of these, I do wear it all the time. Shoot me a message if you've got any questions. More importantly, use the code KIRK10. That'll save you 10% off your purchase with Microclimate. So they're very good about letting us have that as a wood turner. So speed, 2 inches in diameter. I'm locked between centers. And we're going to go for about 1,500 RPMs or so to start with. Maybe a little faster. I've got my spindle roughing gouge. This is my 1.25 inch Carter & Sons spindle roughing gouge. My grain is going spindle orientated. For a tool handle, that's the best orientation we want. We want a nice straight piece of wood. This happens to be some hard maple, kiln dried. It's 8/4 stock. And I'm just going to take several steps down on this. I'm not trying to necessarily go all the way around. In fact, I've still got a little flat. Might be able to hear that bump. I can certainly feel it. And let's take a look. So I've definitely still got some flats. I'm going to go ahead while I've got this tool rest down here, and I'm going to cut a tenon on this end. Again, Carter & Son tool. This is the dimensioner, the Mike Mahoney dimensioner. I grind it a little bit different than it comes, and we'll explain that as we go. That drive center has done its job, so we'll go ahead and remove that. Set it to the side. Now, having this piece in a chuck will give me the ability to drill on the lathe as opposed to drilling with a drill press and not knowing if I've got the piece or the hole running true down the center. Take just a second and line up that revolving center. with the center mark that I had in there. And give that a little tension and tighten that chuck up. Bring in my tool rest. Okay, so this will be the end of the blank that gets the tool handle adapter and the hole drilled in it. Taking just a second, make sure I've got my tool rest where I want, and I'm running parallel to my work. I've done that. I know I am parallel to the work because I've adjusted off of the lathe bed. My basic ABCs of wood turning: anchor, bevel, cut, and then D, direction. Design could also be put into that, but we're not ready for design yet. We're just trying to get to a cylinder. Now, once I've got contact with the bevel, I can cut in both directions. But I can't cut uphill. It'll want to grab and pull that into there, and that would be a catch. Okay, that's got that close. Move my tool rest over a little bit. I'm going to reach back and grab my 3/8 spindle gouge and face this surface off. Want a nice clean surface. And slightly dish that in just a little bit. I didn't go all the way to the revolving center, but that's fine. I'm going to drill this, and so some of that will go away. So I need a 5/8 inch diameter hole, but we're going to start with there it is, the machinist centering bit. This is used by machinists starting the blank, so it's got a very small tip. I've also reduced my RPM. Now that I'm out away from that headstock, I don't want to start that at 1500 RPM, and I'll start and just get a true center on there. These little stiff bits don't tend to wander like your larger bits do. And I've got a 5/8 inch drill bit with a Morse taper on it. Carter & Son sells a drill bit like this. I've marked the depth that I need with a piece of tape. One of the problems with using a marker, and you can see I've got a previous marker, you may see I've got a previous mark on there. It's 1/8 of an inch short, and once you do a bunch of different pieces, you don't know which mark you need to be at, and it gets confusing. And hey, I'd rather turn than clean drill bits anyway, so I could wipe that down with a little bit of alcohol and get rid of that mark most likely, but I'd much rather turn. I'll just take that right to that tape. That should be actually a little bit deeper than the drill bit or the tool handle adapter would need. And got just a little bit of a ridge, a little bit of wood hanging out on that. I'll bring my revolving center in, but not touching. I really don't want to run my tool in and touch that piece or touch the revolving center. I just want to clean up that little bit of wood that's left over. Now I can bring my revolving center in. We now need to make the tenon for the collar or the ferrule, and that is 1.25 inches in diameter. Inch and 3/8 on the end of that taper. It is slightly tapered in a little bit. So one of the reasons why my dimensioner is grounded at a skew angle is then my eye can look over the top of the piece, and the handle is on my side. If that tool is ground square across, it'll still do the job, but your eye's not going to be in the same spot with it. Still a little large. Didn't need to move the tailstock yet. Okay, that end of that is a little under now. Just slide my handle adapter over that, give it a twist. It'll burnish and give me a little bit of a mark on there so I know where the size is. And this relief, they're calling it for 300,000 or 300 1/1000ths of an inch. Not 300,000ths of an inch, 3 100,000ths. And so that is, measures on my caliper right at about 310. I need to just a little bit more, a little longer. I want it to be close, but I don't want to have a gap between the two pieces, or the wood and the tool handle adapter. If I end up with a little bit of a gap, we'll fix that by shortening the end. This surface here, if that's a little long. Almost looks like that was made for it. Double check. Oh, that's right. Got to be right there. It's hitting my caliper on that. So that's ready for some good epoxy. Now, as we're looking at our piece, I'm not going to show you the epoxy, but let's talk a little bit about this piece of wood. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, so you can see these cathedrals on the grain going through here. And I've got straight lines here. I've got my little quarter sawn, my magillary rays right here. Cathedrals here. My quarter sawn. Okay, my strongest section of this, and the hardest to split the handle later if I have a catch or if I'm putting undue force on this, is going to be through one of these cathedrals. So when I glue this all together, I'm going to take the time to align these holes, which would typically be where the top of my tool is, with the cathedrals. So I'm going to take it just a little bit of time to make sure that I set that in there to give it the best possible advantage that I've got. So through the magic of TV, we've got that piece all glued in and ready to go. And you can see the cathedrals coming down here. Now, rather than remount it the way that I had it, and that would work, I want to mount it this way. So I'm going to make a drive for the tool handle adapter. And then we'll mount it between centers. What I believe gives me the advantage, or the advantage of doing that is I'll have a piece that's running true, and as I go to finish the piece, I'll be able to finish all the way down to the end of the handle while it's between centers instead of having to cut it off later. So for me, it's easier to do something like this. So we're going to make a piece here with just a tenon coming out of it that fits, that piece fits into there. Then I'll mount it between centers and turn the handle. So I've got another piece of wood here. This happens to be silver maple, so it's a soft maple. Doesn't matter what it is, just whatever scrap you've got around the shop. First thing I'm going to do, true that up. That way if I have some kind of a catch or a failure, or if it comes out of the chuck, I know it's running true. We're just going to spindle roughing gouges in my hand, start taking some material down, switch over to the dimensioner with a skew angle or a skew. Slicing peel cut, or not a slicing peel cut, just a peel cut. Come in, find your bevel, anchor, bevel, and lift the handle and follow it in. There's a big difference between that and a full-on scrape where the handle runs level. The peel cut is much quieter, much less resistance. And I've cut a taper. It doesn't fit the taper. Square it up, cut a new taper again. Close, square it up, new taper. Decrease the RPM. I'm right on that shoulder. I've got a little bit of a ridge right there. Long point of the skew. Could have used the short point, but the long point came to the wood first, just the way I picked that tool up. Okay, so that's how hard that is. If you miss it and it slips, I could always put a set screw in there I'm close on there, so I could put one of the set screws and tighten it up against that wood. It's a piece of scrap wood. I could recut it. Now I'm back between centers. And I'm going to do this similar to the Carter & Sons handle. And so you can see right behind there that starts to taper back. But with the 20-inch handle, instead of my narrow point being here like it is on the 16, it's going to be back in here. There's kind of my pattern right there. So I do like this shape, and I like the way this works. I think I'll take this particular Pioneer bowl gouge out. While we're looking at this and making this and kind of looking at where size goes. Make sure everything's locked, secure. RPMs are turned down. Anytime I remount a piece, I always bring my RPMs down to the minimum that they will go down to. I don't say 0 because my Vic mark doesn't go to 0. Anchor bevel cut and direction. Now, one of the things, since we have spindle roughing gouge in our hand, we're doing some cutting here. Let's talk about this tool just a little bit. It's a very versatile tool, far more versatile than I think most people give it credit for. And one of the problems that I see is the way that it's typically used, which is the handle up. And sorry, let me get that a little bit better picture. The handle up and just kind of dragging that along. Well, if you look, I'm getting a different shaving immediately. I'm getting ribbons instead of curls. Curls are cuts. Ribbons are scrapes. So those are curls, nice curls coming off. One of the problems, if we go handle up, scraping, my edge only lasts for seconds in scraping, and I'm not going to get as good a finish. So let's cut and rather than scrape. We're going to change direction, go back the other way towards the headstock, where I was going towards the tail. Now I can use any part of the spindle roughing gouge that I am supported by the tool rest. So let me pull my hand back a little bit. You can see I've got this tool, what would normally be considered in a closed position. And I'm using the straight part of the wing on there. Give that a feel and see how it feels to the hand. I want that fingers to almost be closed. I don't want to be too tight and cramp on that to get cramps on there, and I don't want too large. So that's pretty good. I'm going to move my tool rest down. Let's work a little bit more at this end. Again, working back towards the tailstock. I wasn't working towards the headstock. More importantly, working towards the headstock or the tailstock, I'm working larger diameter to smaller diameter. And that's the way the wood prefers to be cut. Completely different if we were doing a bowl, face grain orientation. We've got spindle work here, and so our orientation wants to go large to small. But the most critical part of it is, think about it, is I am going supported fibers. I'm cutting against supported fibers. So let me grab a pencil over here. And I'm cutting down those supported fibers here. And down the supported fibers here. But if I come to this low point and start to cut uphill, I'm going to split that blank. So we don't want to do that. Carters do such a nice job on the polish on these things. I hate to nick that with my tool. Even my sandpaper will get it. I bumped it once. You may have heard it. I bumped it just a little bit. Didn't hurt the tool. That M42 tool steel is much harder than that tool handle on there. Now I need to blend this curve a little bit better. Okay, so the left hand, I'm getting a little bit of length on this. My left hand's kind of reaching over the top and supporting, almost as a center steady. I do have a built-in thermostat. If it gets too hot, I'll let go. You shouldn't have to do this, or don't want to do this with a glove on. And you don't want to have to grab a handful of shavings here. But if you're still getting flex, you're pushing too hard with your tool on there. So your tool's not forcing that in and trying to flex that wood. I'm just supporting the cut. I'm switching over to my 3/8 spindle gouge. Just soften that edge up there. Now there is an advantage to leaving a little bit of that revolving center in there. If I ever need to mount this back up, I know where center is. Getting a little forceful on that tool and pushed off the bevel, left me some ridges. And I do need to sharpen this, but let's see if we can sneak out one last cut. We've all heard that, haven't we? Okay, so I've got this shaped. What I'd now do is go through and sand this. For me, in my shop, and on my piece, I'm going to go ahead and grab a drill with a 3-inch sanding disc and power sand this. It's all side grain. I'm not going to hit any end grain, so I'm not worried about checking it. I wouldn't do a power sand, say a box, because I'd have the end of the box on the lid or the base that I'd be hitting that end grain fiber and wanting to split that, or not split it, check it, give it a heat check. So I'd power sand this and then put a oil finish on it. So anyway, I hope that you find this short, sweet, and helpful, even if you're picked up just a couple little tool techniques.